ask you to chair the meeting because Robin is the chair. But Robin's not able to join us. So just for clarity, I was gonna kind of do my best to facilitate and keep us moving. So if everybody's good with that. Want to start with the land acknowledgement. I was wondering, Melissa, if you could put that into the chat and maybe we could just ask someone on the call, staff or, council member to read it. I'm happy to read it if that gets, if there's no anybody, no volunteers, but Celeste, I know you've done this many times, but is anybody else willing to read the acknowledgement, which is now in the chat?
I'm willing to do it. Happily.
Thanks, Cord. And Cord, before you start, I just want to make sure somebody's not on mute. So somebody could mute their phone. That'd be great because I got some background.
It may be on my end. Do you hear what sounds like another meeting happening here in the office?
It's a meeting. It's the background noise is from you. Go, Cord.
Yeah, sorry. I will read quickly and mute myself. I'd like to acknowledge the many tribes and bands who call Oregon their ancestral territory and honor the ongoing relationship between the land, plants, animals, and people indigenous to this place we now call home. We recognize the continued sovereignty of the 9 federally recognized tribes who have ties to this place and the subsequent bands within those tribes, and we thank them for continuing to teach us how we might all be here together.
Thanks, Cord. In the orientation sessions, we asked participants to reflect on the land acknowledgement and just mention a little bit about what it means to those who were able to be on those orientation sessions. And I found that to be meaningful, and I learned, about how each of us is sort of interpreting and looking at the land acknowledgement. So I thought that was a good use of time. One of the things too that we've reflected on, both I think in those orientation sessions and as a staff, like it's one of the things I've heard come up is that that it's what's important is for us to be grounded in thinking, but also for us to be taking action. And so I don't want to, our agenda is pretty full, and also we want to try to give people back maybe a little gift of time if we can, but know that we've been, as a division, taking very seriously our commitments in this regard and looking at tribal sovereignty and ensuring that our procurement and contractual language reflects a commitment to tribal sovereignty, and have spent some time updating and fixing, excuse me, changing up, some of our paperwork and language to ensure that we're doing what we can to respect tribal sovereignty. I'm not saying we have it all figured out or we have it right, but we've definitely been pushing that, and we've spent some time as a staff in the last couple of months or just having some deep conversation, courageous conversation around tribal history, around historical trauma and the impacts on Indigenous people here in not only the United States, but Canada and other places. So we've been spending some time in this arena, and I felt like we've taken some good steps forward around this work. And so that's not just words, but putting our words into action. So just a quick note there. We're going to talk, I'm going to turn over to Melissa to do a quick roll call for those who are in attendance. And then I'll just say this very quickly. I want to spend this time sort of going over some of the information that I sent you all via email. So I may want to I'll try to be as quick as possible, hitting some of the high points, but sometimes I think it's helpful for folks to hear it And then sometimes things change and need to be refined too. So that's the goal of this meeting, is to just kind of make sure y'all have the information you need, have a chance to ask questions about some of the recent goings on with the division. Melissa, roll call.
Great, thanks, Brian. YDC Executive Committee roll call. Robin Johnson. Celeste Jansen. Maricela Ortega Guzman.
Here.
Jeff Parker. Molly Rogers. Karen Spencer.
Here.
Great, that is it. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. And I know we've got, it looks like maybe a guest or two. Good to see you, Deltra. How are you? We appreciate you being here. We'll have some time for public comment if you have any at the end, and if other members of the public join in, we'll reserve some time for that. And I know that Karen is at the airport, so she's on mute, just to ensure that the background noise doesn't impact the meeting. But Karen, we appreciate you being here from the airport. So as I mentioned, just wanted to spend some time kind of going over some of the updates that I shared with y'all via email, and appreciate that I got some responses from folks to that email update. And for any members who aren't able to attend, of course, we will record this session so that folks can listen in. And just for the record, I'm Brian Detman, Youth Development Division Director. And so I think we'll get started. Actually, I'm going to start with something that was not on the agenda, not because we didn't want it to be, but because it's kind of some relatively new information. And I know that that Anya's here, but has only time until about 1:30. So I just wanted to give folks the quick high level piece of information that's coming out from the OJDDP, the federal DOJ, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, regarding our FY21 award, which is still in process, but it is in process and not yet fully decided, because OJDDP has been reviewing states' compliance monitoring manuals, and they've determined that again, compliance monitoring is the work we do around facility inspections to ensure that those facilities are doing work consistent with the federal law. But they found that these manuals do not align with statutory and regulatory requirements of the formula grant program. And given this determination, they're going to be developing a template that does better align with those requirements, and then states will need to revise our compliance monitoring plan, which we already submitted with our full federal grant application, but we now need to resubmit compliance monitoring manual based on a template that we're going to get from the feds by December 15th of 2021. So just FYI at this point, Anya has been in communication with Molly Rogers, the chair of the Juvenile Justice Committee. We're trying to see what the impacts of this are on staff and staff capacity, or just on our, just general juvenile justice work. But again, just wanted to give you all a heads up that this is, slowing things down, and we've kind of been wondering, like, what's going on at a federal level, what's holding things up with our federal grant award. We've certainly in my tenure had lots of back and forth, and maybe with a change in administration, there's just lots that is shifting and moving with DOJ, OJDDP, and specifically. But Anya, is there anything else you want to add to that topic, just to give folks a sense of that?
Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon, everyone. I think you covered it pretty well. I think interestingly enough, it came out of the blue, totally unexpected as far as states are concerned. It's on a really high level. The letter opens up with a paragraph from the act that refers to accountability and oversight, and makes a direct reference to Congress. So it's an oversight by Congress. So it sounds it sounds to me that it's the Congress who found the agency inadequately monitoring compliance with the act. And by agency here, I mean the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, which trickles down now to the 50 states and 6 territories. So what at this point is just wait and see. So we will be waiting for the revised guideline on what should be going in the compliance monitoring manual. The manual is extensive, so you understand it's a compilation of Oregon laws, how they compare with the federal law. It's a which facilities will oversee our processes, protocols. It's massive. It truly is. So we don't know at this point what revisions will be required. And that's to Molly's point, we don't know how much work it might entail. So since we don't really know anything, there's no point of guessing. So we'll wait until December 15th when we should be, at least we've been promised that we will see the the revised, the template, and then we'll take it from there. And regardless, we will have 180 days to respond. I just hope it's not like super huge, but what the timeline that's missing here is how long it will take them to respond in turn. And then it becomes like super interesting because at this point, we should be applying for fiscal year 22 monies. Now, that's kind of where we are. So not to panic. There are 49 other states in the same position and 6 territories. But just appreciate Brian wanting to keep you in the loop of what's happening, and we will keep you updated when we have more information. So thank you. So good to see you all. But I will leave in a few minutes. Not because I don't appreciate your company, but I have previous commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. Does anybody have any questions from the council about that or comments?
I just wanted to understand how it might impact, because are they withholding funds? So does that then impact our distribution of funds? And is there any adjustments we need to make on the council side?
Yes and no. They're not. They're pending the award. Now, the amount of the award is contingent on at least 2 factors. One, how much the Congress has appropriated for fiscal year 21 and what portion of it will be assigned to Oregon. Now, the second layer here is compliance. If for whatever reason Oregon is found out of compliance for one of the 4 provisions of the act, we would be losing 20% of whatever that amount might be. And then we would have to use the remaining 80% of the allocation to fix the problem that they might identify. So there's so many unknowns here. So, so we don't know at this point how and what impact it will have. But what the good thing is that we still have fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20 funds that, well, also took us quite a bit of time to finally get released to us due to technical issues that the office had with the grant management system that they unveiled a year ago. So anyway, well, in a way, it kind of worked out for us because we waited for the money to come in. So now we have money to spend. Gives us a bit of a cushion of financial cushion to continue operating.
A quick question, Anya, that also might help add some clarity for Celeste and the council. We don't commit the funds from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Legal Prevention until we like have them. So like it took so long to get 19 and 20, we haven't committed those funds to any grants yet because we didn't have them until very recently. So for 21, we are not committing any, there's no grants being made from that until we know we have it, right?
Thank you, Court. Really appreciate the clarity that you provided. That is true. We may not obligate a single dollar until we receive the award. Like physically, it's in our bank.
Perfect. I think that answers Celeste's question. Thanks for the question. If anybody else didn't have anything, I'll keep us moving. Got about 40 minutes left. I also saw that Kiwi and Andy, two of our council members, are also joining us for this meeting. We really appreciate having the two of our newer council members on the call. Thank you both for being here. Again, just really appreciate it. And Kiwi, Andy, anyone else, like if at a point, since you're council members, if you have a question or comment, you can throw it in the chat if you want, but you also just maybe chime in or raise your hand or something, and we'll get you, we'll call on you. So thank you. Moving on to the RFA process, and both Paul is here from our staff and maybe some other staff members as well. Just wanted to kind of quickly highlight the request for application RFA process and just kind of general grant management going forward. It's been quite a process, as I think you're all aware from past meetings, and quite a competitive process in terms of the number of applications we've received. More than 236 were evaluated, and we had over $35 million in actual requests through those applications. So it's been quite a process, lots of engagement, involvement, obviously by the applicants themselves, but also by evaluators and staff and just others who were part of the process. Really appreciate that the whole process and some of the shifts that the council agreed to in the early, in the spring, late spring, early summer, just around approving our process, but then giving the division the space and time to vet and then ultimately make the decisions around the actual awards, which was challenging and again really competitive, and just appreciate all that went into that. I sent an update to you all, and rather than going through all of the things that I wrote in my update, I guess I want to open it up more or less to any questions or comments. Know that we awarded grants in a couple of different broad categories, one around re-engagement and re-engagement opportunity grant. And then the other is the area of which we're referring to as community investments or community grants, I think is what we've often referred to those, but those community investment initiatives kind of break down into 4 different categories: Youth Promise, which is meant to support primarily existing programs and a variety of services; our Youth Workforce Readiness Grants, which is supporting community efforts to directly provide youth with career exploration and skill development; our Youth Solutions Grants, which are supporting youth with risk factors leading to negative educational and workforce outcomes. A lot of the programs we were seeking to support in this were programs and services that are new or innovative or scaling up current programs. So that's the Youth Solutions. And the final area is the Youth Violence and Gang Prevention Grants, which we administer by statute, meant to support youth who are either engaged in activity or victims of violent crime. And so those are the areas of our grants. And I think, as I said, we presented a new application process to the council in March, and then that was later approved in June. We had a protest period that's a part of all of our grant process, which has ended, but we did see 2 protests, which we managed through. And then now we're in the process of issuing grant agreements and working on scheduling grant negotiation meetings with those awarded applicants. And so we've got some, as I said, Paul here to help answer any questions that folks have. Paul, would you want to chime in? Is there anything that I missed or you want to say, and then we'll open it up to questions?
No, I think you covered it really well on it. The one piece that I would add is that for those applicants that did not receive funds that have requested to meet with staff, we're also in that current process right now. So I apologize for my delay. I was actually in one of those meetings. But we are meeting individually with applicants that were not funded and talking about their questions they might have. So we're doing that as a outreach currently in process.
Thanks, Paul. Questions from the committee or council members?
There is a question in the chat from Karen that says, I was wondering how big of a jump in demand there was over past years for grants.
Yeah, good one. Either Paul, maybe, or Cord, who's on staff, prior years. Which is there a sense from in comparing this biennium to the last in terms of interest in applications?
I have not pulled the actual number of applications. I know it was quite an increase. That will be part of our research afterwards to get to. I just have not gotten to that question, so I appreciate the question in the chat. I will put a note down to do that with the research.
Thanks, Paul.
Just
Cord, any thoughts?
Going off of my memory of previous cycles, I think at most we would have about 130 140 applications across all the community investments. And now with community investments and re-engagement, it was over 220, right, Paul? Maybe even more than that.
Community investment grants had a total of 203 applications.
And re-engagement, another 34, Paul?
36. No, 33 awarded. I think there's 33 evaluated, sorry.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, so that's a pretty significant jump. I mean, like 80+% at least increase over our biggest showing. And in terms of dollar amount, I think it was a similar level of increase. So I think a lot more awareness and a lot more demand. Great.
Thank you both. I see this question also from Karen around the nature of the protests. Yeah, I think probably in the interest of time, best to talk more about that in December. Not that we don't, often I think generally speaking, folks are interested in understanding kind of the scoring and where they were in the overall kind of scheme. And then I'll say one thing about this, just to say it quickly. I think one question was about whether or not we should, as an agency, be prioritizing applications from nonprofit organizations. And by statute, there's a range of entities that are eligible for Youth Development Division and Youth Development Council grants. And so by statute, we can't restrict our grant making to nonprofits. But there was a, if I'm not mistaken, Paul, there was a kind of question and protest around that idea.
Yes, there was. And I'm actually taking a couple notes. Karen, those are great questions. We'll try to get more details of both those questions at the presentation in December, because we can pull the numbers from last year, get you a better answer than what we think.
Yeah, perfect. So we'll follow up in December. If are there any other questions, we appreciate it. This will help us, get that December meeting really dialed in and focused on some of the things that folks want to hear about. I'm going to move us forward. And the next item on the agenda is really just around our YDC leadership roles and just kind of roles even more generally. Admittedly, I think we've taken some time to try to get the committees restructured, and then did some work to think about who should be on those committees based on the survey that you responded to. So that's taken some time. I mentioned also in my update, I've got some things going on in my personal life, which just with all the RFA stuff, so we might be a little further, a little bit behind in what maybe we were hoping, but I think we've made some good progress. So I'm going to ask Melissa to share her screen. And I see you sent, sent a link that I'm guessing some people may be able to see, but a bunch of people probably won't. So know that we're sharing screen on this. One of the things that I wanted to just put on the radar that is still something we've got to resolve, I guess is the word, figure out, is having a YDC chairperson. Again, we know that Robin's our new chair. She was out of the office and so wasn't able to attend today, but Melissa and I are going to connect with Robin, I think next week on the agenda and all of this information. So we'll catch up with her, but we need to ideally figure out a chairperson. I'll tell you full disclosure, we've asked a couple of people just if they were interested in it, and had some folks say, yeah, well, maybe I might be interested. I got a lot going on. And I don't want to put somebody into a tough spot. So we're still looking, and again, I appreciate that the folks that we asked, they considered it. But again, my sense was, if perhaps there's other interest of somebody who's like really like has both time and strong interest, and we didn't want to push forward, sort of force somebody voluntold. We don't want to do voluntelling. But just wanted to say to you as an executive committee that the council will elect one of its members to serve as vice chair for 1 year. If we elect somebody earlier than July 1st, I bet we can figure out exactly what that 1 year timeframe is. So don't get hung up. I know that Melissa's just kind of quoting our procedures and protocols manual there. And then the duties are, I don't know, pretty straightforward. Preside at meetings when the chair is not there, and then perform other duties as directed. That's a pretty wide open space. But there may be some things that come up that we need that vice chair to do. But I think the primary one is, chairing meetings when the chair isn't available. This other piece, which is not in any procedure or protocol, is just around having the vice chair kind of be the next person in line. That's a bit of succession planning, but that's not written in any formal way. So we don't need to, no pressure to say, oh, the vice chair is then therefore is going to be the next chairperson. That's not, as I said, written in any protocol or procedure. So that is not an explicit expectation. If the person's interested and we want to have those conversations, hey, let's figure it out. But basically, you've got a year in the vice chair's role, and I think again, it's really helpful for those meetings where we might not have a chair. So I'm going to open it up to any questions or comments. We'll bring this up again in December, but just again wanted to kind of put it out there for the executive committee to hear and see if there were any thoughts.
For this, Brian, I wonder if does everybody who you've approached to be vice chair know that signing up to be vice chair doesn't mean they're signing up to be chair afterwards? I
think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, yeah, Melissa and I have been doing it. And so I think and hope we've made that clear.
Okay, I just wonder if that might change folks' mind, but if you've already talked it through, then you've already talked it through. All right.
As I said, putting this on the radar. If post meeting anybody has any other thoughts or ideas, I've had council members text me about ideas, and so try to follow up on those. I see Karen's comment in the chat around, hey, if there's a youth committee member or younger member of the council who's interested, we'd certainly be excited about having somebody in that role. And as I said, the main thing is that sort of facilitation and presiding over meetings. What that would involve, just to be a little bit more specific for anyone who's interested, is we usually have a meeting before the quarterly meeting to say, here's the agenda, here's how we think the timing and the flow will go. So I'd say if we, and we would want a chair to let us know in advance as much as possible if they weren't able to attend and chair a meeting. Now, sometimes things come up, somebody gets sick or something happens and it's like in the moment, and know that staff and I think other council members are there to lend any support like in the moment if it's just like handed, it needs to happen, quickly. So, but all that being said, we try to plan ahead if we had some advance notice and then give that vice chair an hour long or some sort of meeting in advance of the actual quarterly meeting, just to make sure they knew what they were doing. So just on the table, nothing needs to be decided today. We'll talk about it more in December, but if there's interest among any folks on this call, just let us know. Moving forward to committees, Melissa, you can scroll down a little bit. I think, sorry, one of the things that we also wanted to talk about was just committee chairs. And so Melissa's got this item, this sort of, I'm not going to read this to you because I don't know, I probably need my glasses. But know that we've got committee chairs of each committee. And I just wanted to call out that as we get into this next section around the committees themselves and the membership that we'd like to recommend, we do want committees to select a chair. And again, that can happen within the committee. It does not need to happen either at this executive committee level, or frankly, doing that into the December meeting is not probably the best use of time. But again, wanting to just make clear to anyone who's thinking about the role and responsibility of a committee chair, it is bulleted and written here about calling special meetings, if necessary, setting the agenda, presiding, which means really facilitating the meeting, ensuring fairness and impartiality, enforce, this is what's in the procedure manual. Both Melissa and I kind of blocked a little bit out this enforce parliamentary procedure. I'm not sure that's the thing that I would recommend, but that does mean facilitating in such a way that when we do take a vote on things, that folks have a chance to cast their vote, yay or nay, or abstain, and that there be time for discussion at the in an appropriate sort of parliamentary way, right? You do, and that you ask for somebody to make a motion, and then somebody has to second the motion. We can explain that to folks who don't know it, but having those procedures do ensure that there's, I think, those decisions or recommendations that a committee may make happen in a way that are well founded and supported. So that's just a little bit about committee chair. Just wanted to make sure you all were familiar, particularly as we go into this conversation about the committees and some of the exciting work that I think will ultimately really be getting started in the after the first of the year. But that's a little bit about a committee chair role. Any questions there?
Brian, can I add that each committee has a YDD staff liaison? So there's a direct connection with one or more of the staff members, but one staff member appointed as liaison to each committee. Yeah, so as committee chair, yeah, you're not on your own. and that as the staff is there to support and facilitate and help get meeting notices out and help just ensure that the logistics, the notes, and lots of those details are taken care of. So the other thing I'll say this, it's not in the bulleted list, Melissa, but probably worth noting is that at our quarterly meetings, we do have a section of the agenda where committees do report out on their progress or outcomes or work more generally. And so it is important to have the committee chair be able to share any critical recommendations or key discussions that committee may have had. And again, that happens often in collaboration with the staff member. But know that we might even add this bullet, right? That there is that sort of report out function that committee chairs do tend to play.
there it is. Council members serving on committees will keep the council apprised of committees' activities. Yes, there it is. So Melissa, let's add that later. Let's just go over the committees. So as you, I think, remember in June and September, we looked, maybe it was mostly September, we looked at some sort of updates and new structure to our committees. We haven't fully activated this. And in a couple of cases, we've activated some, but I'll just be really clear with you all that this is we're still rolling this out. And for guests on the call, I'll just note, non-council members can be members of committees. So we are interested in and we're excited about the fact that someone else from a community across the state or in one of the 9 federally recognized tribes, right, might want to be a part of committee, just to hear and listen and make contribution. Also, perhaps as like a preparation for potential appointment to the full council. So we are excited about the idea that we could have some non-council members engaged with some of our committees, and particularly as we roll out these new a couple of new committees. So we've got the Policy, Rules, and Research Committee, again based on the survey that was done, and then again Melissa and I kind of tried to find balance and do some things to make this work. So you will see, and again, we council members, we deeply appreciate all your work and effort, but I think council members are probably on 2 committees. If you're on the executive committee, then you're probably on another committee. And then if you're not on the executive committee, you may be on just 2 other committees. So that's sort of how it worked out. And we just wanted to share this with the exec. So if you had questions or concerns, we could hear them and then, anticipate those for the broader discussion at the December quarterly meeting. So here's the list. I'm going to maybe, Melissa, you can kind of slowly scroll up. As you get to the youth committee, I'll just note that one of the questions that came up, I believe it was in September, was, hey, what about sort of non-youth committee members? And I think my sense was the current youth committee members were like, yeah, that seems like we could probably do that. I think it's important that the majority of the youth committee be youth members, and by youth, the federal OJDDP standard is under 28. So we've added a couple of names who were interested in this, but again, I think that you'll see the majority of these folks like meet that federal definition. I'm not going to confess, I will confess that I don't know everybody's exact age. So if you're on the line, but we really appreciate the strong work that this committee has been doing. And so moving down to the equity and disparity, this is so youth committee is an existing and standing group. And I think we actually did ask Andy and Kiwi, sorry, I'll note this real quick, to join the last youth committee meeting. It made sense to start to involve them. This equity and disparity committee is new and hasn't met yet, but this is the group that we proposed, again based on the survey and interest expressed. So that's what that group would look like. And then juvenile justice, again, an active, going, frankly, very active committee. I think these names will be familiar to you. I think the one addition is Kiwi. We added you to juvenile justice. And so that's the only shift. We haven't, can't remember if we've actually formally invited you yet to that committee meeting, but no, don't worry, we'll get you added, but wanted to share these lists with the executive committee. And then at the bottom, Melissa, you can just scroll. Executive committee is made up essentially of the chair of the council and
And then the chairs of the other committees.
the chairs of the other committees.
So some of them haven't been determined yet. Again,
Okay.
currently it would be Molly Rogers and Marisela Ortega Guzman.
Got it. Who's Marisela is on this call. Celeste, we have you as past chair also on the executive committee. So I think that you know, for me, that seems important. Please weigh in if you think differently. Celeste, I see your comment in the chat about that makes sense. So I think having the past chair on the executive makes sense. I think we had like Chief Teague, for example, as a past chair was also on the executive committee. So I think that kind of historical perspective does make sense. So those are the committee makeups that we propose. We'll bring those more fully, roll them out in December. Any questions or comments as you see the list? I see some things happening in the chat. So just let us know if you see anything that we should think more about or if you have any questions.
I'll add that when we surveyed the the council members for which committees they wanted to be on, I'm pretty sure everyone got their first and or second choices. And when Brian, assessed the list, it all made sense. We were in really great shape and agreement with what committees everyone wanted to be on. So that was good.
Yeah. Thanks, Melissa, for getting that survey out and for folks who responded. And if I think we even had a few text exchanges and like follow-ups like, hey, where do you want to be? So, and I love this comment from Marisela. Marisela, very good point. I'll say it again. Deltra, you just hear us loud and like for folks who are saying, I don't know about being on the full council, but showing up to a committee which meet, I would say, and the committees will decide their meeting schedule, but it's at least quarterly, and then in some cases it's monthly based on need, right? So the Juvenile Justice Committee was meeting more regularly in the spring because it just there are lots of sort of approvals and plans that they were looking at. So committees do have the option of kind of increasing the number of meetings, but they are typically quarterly. I'd say at about 60 minutes, although in some cases you see some committees doing a 90-minute or even a 2-hour meeting, like the youth committee actually has been meeting for more like 2 hours, if I'm not mistaken. So the commitment is, as I said, quarterly, 60 to 120 minutes. In between meetings, there's probably occasional things to read or review, but most of the work kind of happens in the context of the committee. So Marisela, again, I think you're spot on. If there are ideas about other people, young people, community members, advocates that might be interested in committee involvement, we'd love to hear about that.
Brian, I was just going to add that when we think about, we've talked about sustainability for chairs or for the executive committee, but I really love the idea of using committees to help get folks interested in the larger YDC.
Mm-hmm.
And if we wanted to, for example, see if we could get tribal representation on our different committees or youth representation, it just is a really nice way to introduce folks to the YDC and hopefully then could help with recruitment when we're looking to fill spots for the larger council. So it's just a nice strategy. I know for a long time we had a question about whether or not this was possible or not. So I'm glad we have clarity and I'm glad we can do it.
Yeah, thanks, Celeste. I agree. I think we should, and with pandemic and just so many issues and not being able to meet in person, it may be helpful to engage folks a little bit more, to say, hey, it's, you're not having to drop, committee meetings can happen virtually. So hopefully we can use that to our advantage. But we also want to know that we value and respect relationship building. And so I think for some folks having that in-person connection does make sense. But broadly speaking, I totally agree with you, Celeste. Like you building up the involvement in our committees and then finding ways to have some of those folks join the council is definitely the way to go. All right, we're at about almost 10 till. Again, you're just getting a preview here in many ways. We're going to jump to another preview of the just agenda for the quarterly meeting. Thank you, Melissa, for doing that. And then we'll end with any public comment. Thanks for making that a little bigger. This is the draft agenda for our quarterly council meeting. We will spend some time on the request for application and an update there, be able to better answer some of the questions that were asked today. We've not spent much time on this today, and I think that's okay, but I think folks know from the past September meeting and also from the summer, want to give the council a broader update on the racial and ethnic disparities technical assistance work. We haven't completely launched it, to be very frank with y'all. We had to slow things down a bit because we wanted to give some space at the last Juvenile Justice Committee meeting, which was just earlier this week, to get some questions answered and get some more input and feedback, a lot of which was coming from counties and juvenile directors from county juvenile departments. So we'll give a broader update at the council meeting on that work. Cord and probably others can fill you in on the strategic plan and progress we've made there. Specifically, want to also share some brand communication work that we've been working on, kind of a new logo and look. Not that we want that's the critical goals and priorities are the most important parts of the plan, but we're trying to tighten our communication. So excited to share some of what that looks like. We're going to be going away from the purple and orange. I'll tell you that right now. And then talking about legislation and policy, right? Short session coming up in the new year. And then we've already started planning and thinking across the educational agencies and also with the governor's office about some of our plans for legislation, things that we might support or things that we may put forward. So I'll have Cord talk a little bit about what we're thinking about. In an ideal world, I would have loved to pull our policy research and rules committee together to talk about that. I don't know, frankly, if there's enough time to do that. Wanted to bring the list of members to this executive committee meeting, but we'll see what we can do. But at least giving you all a preview of what's coming up, both for the short session and then for the next legislative session in 2023 is what we'll do there. And then talking a little bit more about the leadership roles, committee reports, my report, and then comment. So that's the agenda that we've got planned. We'll go over this with Robin next week and see if she has any questions or updates. But anything from this group here?
Brian, this is Molly.
Hey, Molly.
Hey, thanks. Sorry, I have landed now finally in Chicago, so I was a little bit slow getting on. So
thanks for being here.
Yeah, hey, at some point in our YDC meetings, I would really like to just and maybe it can be during the committee reports or your report, but just take each of these meetings. We have so many new members to do just a recap of what our kind of roles are in the different venues. So I'll be selfish in this one, really around JCP and the role of the State Advisory Committee as we play that role for the federal government. And maybe it's not in this meeting, maybe it's in the March meeting, to pull together some points both between myself and Anya to really talk about what that responsibility is and what those roles are in regards to JCP. I feel like we've talked a lot about grants and our work, which is awesome, our strategic plan and all of those pieces, but there are some outside influences that I think at some point it would just be great to share with the whole Youth Development Council.
Sure. I mean, happy to, you may, Molly, were you, I can't tell exactly how long you've been on the meeting, but we did start with a little something that wasn't on the agenda officially, but started with a little quick update on OJDDP and some of the information coming out of the feds around our compliance monitoring plan, et cetera. But so just FYI, we previewed like, hey, there's stuff, coming from the feds that is going to impact the division in our work. So I think, I wanted to preview that a little bit with this in today's meeting, and happy to figure out how to outline that in some of your, and answer some of your questions, or at least just kind of give some space in the December meeting or in the spring, or maybe both.
Just a space on the federal kind of updates and just, so I don't know if it fits in this, if this one feels pretty tight, that's totally okay. But maybe in the March meeting, setting aside 10 minutes just to kind of.
I think we'll add some time in this meeting. It may not be a ton of time, but I'll just say aloud, we made some space today, given some of what we heard from the feds. So I put it right at the top, and Anya could only be on until 1:30 anyway. So we'll figure out what we can do in this agenda.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks for that. That's a good catch. And we built this agenda before we actually had this information from the feds around the compliance monitoring manuals and so on. So we'll get it. It's a good catch. Any other questions or points?
In the recent orientation training that we had, that was definitely generally addressed for the new council members, the focus on how we are a state advisory group, in addition to all the other things that the council does.
Thanks, Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I am not seeing any other hands or questions or comments. I do want to I'm gonna just open it up to public comment. Melissa, do you want to remind I don't know if we have anybody who has anything to add from the public. But I think, Melissa, could you say a couple words about like what the limitations are?
Sure. Public comment is open to anyone who wants to speak for up to 3 minutes. I didn't have any express interest yet, but I'm looking at our one guest to see if Deltra would like to take advantage of these last couple minutes and make a public comment. You are welcome to the floor.
Thank you. The primary thing that I'd like to do is offer gratitude. My name is Deltra Ferguson, and I'm the Executive Director from Resolve Center for Dispute Resolution and Restorative Justice of Southern Oregon. We're a nonprofit that provides dispute resolution and restorative justice for our region, and we specifically with regard to the council, we receive grant funds to be able to continue our work with juveniles in juvenile justice, and then also our restorative justice programming in the schools. And so we're grateful. I also want to add one caveat. I was glad that I caught that at the top of the meeting to hear that news. I trust that there will be some sort of communication that will go out to different grantees and so forth, so we can prepare, knowing that things will be delayed. And another interesting thing is that with compliance, and as I've observed this over the years as an executive director for a nonprofit, that it is sometimes it's strange how compliance comes through and it changes, and it often is not paired with technical assistance or an offer of technical assistance. And sometimes that would be a good thing. So something to consider. I guess I would use, I'm going to use an example just to illustrate. There's some compliance required in our current grant for wave accessibility, which is wonderful. That's our webpage. That's webpage accessibility, which is absolutely right. And there's a compliance piece. And but that will require money and maybe some technical assistance. I'm not sure exactly what is going to be required for our organization to get into that place, but we'll do it, and we're happy to do it. It's the right thing to do. It's just it just has that component, and so so that's a thought, and then also just understanding that compliance can sometimes take time. So as compliance becomes something that is required, and I hope that there will be also addendums or things like that that allow organizations to sort of create a plan and then get themselves into compliance if they're out of compliance, because that's just super helpful. So that is all I really have to say. I hope you heard the gratitude part at the beginning, because that's the most important part. Thank you.
Thank you, Deltra. Yes, hard work by all the applicants, and we appreciate the hard decisions that needed to be made, and yeah, we appreciate it. It was a lot of work, and a lot of work that's happening in communities, to be clear, right? To make things happen for young people and families. So we appreciate that. I will, Deltra, just as we end the call, just to try to clarify the stuff that this federal compliance and the dollars that we're talking about is not going to affect the grants that Resolve and others have applied for. There are different pots of money. So I don't think you're going to see any impact with the grants around the community investment grants, which I think you probably were one of the recipients of. There's other dollars that we get from the federal government that we do award, which we haven't yet awarded because of the things that the federal government is telling us. But I'll leave it there. I don't think this stuff will impact you or your work. And at the same time, I think what I also am hearing around the sort of technical assistance piece, when we do have issues that come up around, technical issues, compliance issues, I mean, state level things, we appreciate that giving space for not community-based organizations, nonprofits, and other entities that do get our dollars, that we work alongside them to try to ensure that their work is well aligned. But again, I think the federal stuff won't have an effect. It will affect, I mean, to Molly's point, there's some juvenile justice county juvenile justice entities potentially, and those that we make direct awards to. So suffice it to say that if the federal process has an impact on any entity, we will be in direct communication with that entity so that they know. But we're at 2:00, and I know I said we might give you some time back, and in fact, we just took another minute. So I just appreciate everybody's time. Thanks for being here, and we will see you at our next meeting.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Good to see everybody.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Deltra, for being here. Take care. Thanks, Maricela, and everyone else. Karen. Yeah, bye.